Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
How's it, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lee Kwai, and I'm sitting with our good friend, Jamie Block.
Great to be here. Great to see you again.
Great to see you all again. This is definitely not the second time we're recording this because I messed up the first time. Not the whole episode, just like 1 minute at the start. Anyway, we are here today, and we are talking already about Brothers War.
Yeah.
This is one of the Commander Precon decks from the set, the Mishra Precon. What's it called?
Mishra's Burnished Banner. They like alliteration as much as I do.
But they didn't want to go with M. You know, they just wanted to change it to B and then alliterate on that.
Yeah.
When I think of Mishra, I think of either Burnished or Banner, let me tell you. Okay. This is going to be the same as our Precons always are. We're going to help you upgrade this deck very quickly by only changing 10 cards. So 10 cards go in, 10 cards come out. And also, we keep our budget to $30 or less. The goal of these, as always, is to get them up to speed and ready to battle it out with quote-unquote real decks as soon as possible. So if you want to do a complete overhaul, go to EADH Rec and build it from scratch. That's a whole different thing. But I think for most people, you get the deck and you want to play it, right?
Yeah, I think especially for a set like Brothers War, where we're probably going to have some people who are coming back because the story is revisiting something that is nostalgic to them.
Yep.
You know, you don't necessarily want to be building a new Commander deck from scratch. Maybe you've never played Commander before. An easy way into the format is buy a Precon and upgrade it.
Yeah, and we've found that just these 10-card upgrades can really change the power level of the deck by a decent amount to all of a sudden it really does have a chance to win games against decks people have played for years. So before we get into it, though, we got to talk about our sponsors, because if you want to play these decks, you're going to have to buy them, and the best place to go to get all your Magic products, singles, anything at all, is cardkingdom.com/command. You know, Card Kingdom was a sponsor of our content for a very long time. We're so happy to be back with them. And one of the biggest reasons why I love Card Kingdom is just the speed at which they get you your stuff. If I'm building a Precon, that means, or if I'm upgrading a Precon, that means I'm really excited to play it. I want to get it into action very quickly. You don't want to wait a long time for your cards. And a lot of times at some of the other services, you might order from a lot of different places to get your cards. It might take a while for some of them to get there, and you're just sitting there being like, I want the card so I can play the deck. It's not like that with Card Kingdom. They ship your stuff usually within hours of when you've put in your order. It really gets to you super, super fast. They're the only ones I trust when I have like a game on Friday, you know, it's Monday or Tuesday, and I need those cards so that I can make sure that I'm not there on Friday and not able to play my new deck. So cardkingdom.com/command. They have the best service. If there's any mistakes made, they really go above and beyond to fix it too. That's another thing I love about them. And then, of course, once you get your cards, you want to protect them. ULTRAPRO.com/command. That's our affiliate link with them. They have an online store now. This is relatively recent. They haven't always had that. Of course, we'd like you to support your LGS. Go there to buy your sleeves, your playmats. They'll for sure carry Ultra Pro products because you find their product all over the world because it is so high quality. This is the stuff that Jimmy and we trust our own collections to protect our own cards. But the great thing about the affiliate link, again, ultrapro.com/command, is you can buy directly from UltraPro. And sometimes your LGS just doesn't have the particular thing that UltraPro offers. They just didn't stock it at your local game store, or maybe it's sold out or whatever. And so if you want to find specific sleeves that match a specific playmat, that match a specific deck box, and kind of, you know, make sure that your outfit's all matching and whatnot. You know, if you're going to something like Magic 30 or something like that, you know, a lot of times you want to impress the other players and look nice. And ultrapro.com/command is a place where you can find a lot of that stuff, and often at a very big discount. They have sales going on there all the time. So yeah, you can get the stuff you need, protect your game pieces, and support the content you enjoy. It's a win-win-win-win-win. That might have been one too many wins. Anyway, all right. And the final way to support all of our content, is directly, if you go to patreon.com/commandzone. We shout out one lucky patron every single episode. And this episode is dedicated to Andrew Calhoun. Andrew, you rock. Patrons also get a ton of perks. You can find that, again, patreon.com/commandzone. Okay, let's get into it here. Mishra's Burnished Banner, Precon Budget Upgrade Guide. Same rules as always. 10 cards in, 10 cards out. Total budget of $30. As usual, we're not going to touch the mana base. We find that mana bases generally work in the precons, even if they're not optimized. They will allow you to cast your spells.
Yeah, especially in an artifact deck, you got a lot of colorless spells. Works even better this time.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, but we're going to break down also the stats of the deck and give you our reasoning for, how we analyzed it for, so that you know why we came to the decision that we came to as far as what card stat. I'm saying it was Jamie who did most of the legwork here. Let's start by reading the new commanders that are in these precons. We always like to analyze them and make sure that the commander that's on the box is the one we really want to be running as the commander of the deck when we first open it up. Sometimes that's not the case. It would be weird not to run Mishra in the Mishra precon, though. Let's see, because it's got his name right in it, but let's see what it says.
Yes, we have Mishra, Eminent One. He costs 2 in a Grixis, so 2 blue, black, red, for a legendary creature human artificer. He's 5/4 and reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of target non-creature artifact you control, except its name is Mishra's War Form, and it's a 4/4 construct artifact creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So in short, you get a 4/4 creature version of a non-creature artifact you have until end of turn.
Yeah, so it kind of copies artifacts for in the short term. You generally want them to have ETBs or dice triggers or something like that you can take advantage of. And they become creatures, so you can also sort of attack with them, and that matters in other ways sometimes. Mm-hmm. If you watched Game Nights Live, which is in the past for you and in the future for us, because that's how filmmaking works. Gavin played this deck, and that was when we first revealed it.
Yeah, can you believe that amazing thing it did?
Yeah, that was crazy, that game.
It was crazy.
Yeah, Game Nights Live also just came off without a hitch and was amazing. Okay, the second commander from the deck is actually the commander I'm going to be playing in the upcoming episode of Game Nights about Brothers War. Boy, that's an early reveal. We don't usually talk about that so early, but I decided to. Okay, Ashnod the Uncaring. So this is Ashnod, finally.
Yeah.
We've seen her altar.
We love her altar. Her altar gets you attacked a lot as soon as you play it because it's a combo piece.
But it also gets you wins a lot because it's a combo piece.
Yes.
All right, this is Ashnod the Uncaring, the legendary creature version. 2, a blue, a black, and a red for a 1/4. So 5 mana, 1/4. Ashnod has Death Touch. Whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. And it has reminder text, sacrificing an artifact for mana to activate an ability doesn't count. We don't see doesn't count a lot of cards anymore. That seems like old wording. So basically, if you have something like, something like a Mishra's Bauble, mm-hmm. that requires sacrifice for its ability. So
yeah. It's things that sacrifice themselves. It's things that sacrifice other permanents.
Yeah, clue tokens. Great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do the Mishra's Bauble, yes, you'll draw 2 cards. If you do the clue token, yes, you'll draw 2 cards. So a lot of extra value. It's a sacrifice harmonicon.
Yes.
A little bit. Okay, so let's talk about the stats. Wow, you're getting better at that every time.
Thanks.
All right. The deck stats from Mishra's Burnished banner will start with the most common stats, the 4 categories we always go over. Go ahead, Jamie.
Sure. We've got 14 pieces of ramp.
That's quite a lot.
That's a lot. Some of them are more expensive. You've got your Dreamstone Hedron type effects in there. We've got 15 pieces of card draw.
Dang, I like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
We've got 6 pieces of single target removal.
Right, decent.
Slightly on the low side, yeah. But not horribly on the low side.
3 years ago, that's good. Now we need 4 or 5 more, but yeah.
Yeah. 3 board wipes, which has become the standard for these things.
And that's about right. I don't think you want more than that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at the deck-specific stats for this one.
We've got 36 non-creature artifacts, which are the things Mishra cares about. They're the things he can make copies of. 36 seems like plenty.
That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's, we always say, if there is a theme to a deck, you're going to be around 25 to 30 of that thing. This is north of that, which is great.
Yeah, this is an excellent number to see. Some of those are lands, but even then, a 4/4 hasty land that ramped you or attacked someone. There are 43 artifacts total. That's including those 36. So basically,
almost all of them are non-creatures.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are 27 cards that are just in any way artifact synergy / support. Maybe they buff your artifacts. Maybe they care about casting artifact spells, things like that. There are 15 cards that deal with sacrifice. That's relevant because of Ashnod.
But that number's so much lower Well, we'll get to this question in a second, but it seems to indicate something clearly to me.
Yes. And there are 7 cards that interact with the tokens, either making them or interacting with them in other ways, which is relevant because Mishra is making tokens.
Right. It makes a 4/4 token copy of a thing.
Yes.
And also a good ETB or dies trigger on a artifact might be that it makes tokens and you get value that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question we always ask next, and the reason we even did the stats to begin with, is who should we run as the commander out of the deck? Jamie, surprise us all.
Mishra. The deck with Mishra in the name should run Mishra.
Shouldn't run Ashnod?
It should not. I think Ashnod's great, but in the precon, like we said, there are 15 cards that have sacrifice. Of those, I counted 13 where doubling the sacrifice actually did anything.
Right.
And among those, not all of them were even that impactful when you doubled them.
So you just need way bigger changes. Probably best to take Ashnod out and just make a new deck around it.
An Ashnod deck from scratch seems great.
But this is
I'm
not
a fan
that.
of yours, but yeah, this is not that. The entire upgrade would need to be just adding in 10 sacrificers, and even then, you'd be leaving some weird stuff in. It would be a whole to-do.
Okay, so we are going to move ahead with Mishra as the commander. We're going to be copying our non-creature artifacts, turning them into 4/4s. Not turning them into, creating copies that are 4/4s until end of turn. Okay. But before we sort of move into the 10 cards in, 10 cards out, let's ask the next question that everybody wants to know always about these decks, which is about reprint value.
Right.
And generally we do deck reveals for almost every set now, and we get one deck and we kind of reveal the reprint value with the deck. But this time we were doing it on stage, live in Vegas, and we didn't really get to talk about reprint value. So this is going to be a new discussion point for both of these decks. Remember, prices we're going to talk about here are always on our channel taken to prior to the deck reveal, because we're always recording these before the deck's been revealed. So we don't know the prices afterwards. So in order to keep our prices constant so that we can look back on years past and compare, we have to take the prices at the same time every time. So remember also, that this is only going to this is a result of the same thing. We can only talk about the price of the new cards when we're talking about deck value. We don't know the prices of the new cards because the world doesn't know about them yet.
Right. So the total reprint value of this deck is $100.70.
Not bad.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I'm breaking a personal curse in that I am finally not doing the upgrade for the deck that is the lowest reprint value of its batch.
Right. The other one is lower than this one. I think that video will have already come out, but we won't spoil it just in case we switch the order. But 100 is pretty good. If we look on the average reprint values from previous years.
Yeah, it's in the middle, leaning toward good.
Yeah. And I think we've got to be happy with anything north of $100.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's when we start to get down into the 80s and lower that it starts to wrinkle your nose a little. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the notable reprints in the deck. So we're going to talk about all the cards sort of worth $5 or more in one batch, and then the stuff that's between $2 and $5. Because mostly you don't get super excited about a $1.25 card, but this one actually has a few over $5 and a lot between $2 and $5. So the reprints that are $5 and above are
Lithoform Engine, which is currently going for $7.85. That is a 4-mana legendary artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it to copy an activated or triggered ability, 3 and tap it to copy an instant or sorcery spell, or 4 and tap it to copy a permanent spell. And for all of those, it's that you control.
And this is a card we talk about fairly often. It's a good card to have in your collection. It will be useful in a lot of different decks just because it has a wide array of things it can do. So that is a good solid reprint and something that players will be happy to get their hands on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. The next card is a card I've been seeing more and more.
Yeah, I think this card is sort of rising to staple status if it were not already there. Maybe it is.
Yeah, I would say its stock is on the way up. It's definitely like, I would buy a couple copies of this card. You're right. In a couple of years, it's easy to see this being double the price it is now easy.
Yeah, and sort of on that note, just about value and reprint price and all that. For a lot of these cards, this is going to be the first and only time they are in the old frame. So for any collectors out there who care about that, weigh that in when you're thinking about pricing on all these decks.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. But yeah, the cards are in the old frame in this deck, and there's no guarantee that they'll do that for any of these cards again.
Exactly. But the next card, the one we've been building to, is Cursed Mirror. It's an artifact that costs 2 and a red. It can tap for red, but also, as Cursed Mirror enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste.
I've seen this card do some crazy things. So yeah, it's a very cool card. If you haven't played with it yet, I guarantee you want to try it out. Then that was $7.50.
Yes.
Pretty good. All right, the last card that is $5 or more is Expressive Iteration. It is just a blue and a red for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, put one of them on the bottom of your library, and exile one of them. You may play the exiled card this turn. So it's an interesting card selection, kind of middle ground between Night's Whisper and, I don't know, Divination-ish.
Yeah, I mean, this card has done a lot of work in a lot of formats that are not necessarily Commander, which has led to, perhaps certain bannings and other treatments of the card in those formats. But it just speaks to how good the card is. And this is definitely one where I think the fact that this is its first and maybe only printing in an exciting different frame is going to make that reprint maybe worth even a little bit more than it looks like on its face.
Yeah, it was $5.25 before the reprint was known. So yeah, I could see this version of it being the desired version as well. Okay, there's a lot of cards between $2 and $5. How many is that?
There are 14 of these.
Okay, so we're not necessarily going to read all of them, but we will read what they are. Yeah. It's great to see this much value in this area, because a lot of times these decks will get up there in price, but when you really break it down, it's a lot of 85-cent cards, which are not as exciting. You don't really need a lot of them. But here there's a decent amount at $4, 3 and change. So these are real cards that you will play and, you can use in your decks. So let's go down the list here. Silas Wren, Seeker Adept, $4.
3 and Dynamo, $4.
Strionic Resonator, $3.85.
Joyra, Weatherlight Captain at $3.75.
Emery, Lurker of the Lock, $3.50.
Master Transmuter, also $3.50.
Padim, Console of Innovation, also $3.50.
Seed of the Synod, $3.25.
That's one of the artifact lands. Yep. Some people are excited about that. Muzio? Visionary Architect, $3. Notice how I didn't commit to anything there. Those all seem good to me.
Yeah, pick your favorite.
Yep.
Reliquary Tower, always great.
Yep.
$3 right now.
Vault of Whispers, $3.
Another artifact land.
Yep.
Herald of Anguish, $2.85.
Blasphemous Act, $2.50.
And Mirror Works, $2.
All right, so more than a handful, a lot of $2 to $5 cards. I think generally these reprints I'm pretty happy with. I like seeing Strionic Resonator on there. That's a card that just can see its way in a lot of decks. The artifact lands, very, very useful all the time. Reliquary Tower, a lot of stuff in there that I think, by virtue of it being an artifact deck, is good. It's good for players, and I think they're going to be happy to get their hands on. Maybe more useful than your average precon as far as taking these out and using the pieces in other places. Yeah,
a lot of them are basically good in literally any artifact deck that is in the right colors for it.
All right, and then let's talk about the best cards in the deck, Jamie. And this is not from a reprint value standpoint. This is from a gameplay standpoint. So when you're playing the deck, what are the cards you're hoping to draw the most or are going to do the most for you?
So my number one here is Brutaclad Telcor Engineer.
Brutaclad!
I cannot do voices. And now you know that. Brutaclad is 4 blue-red for a 4/4. Creature tokens you control have haste, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue Phyrexian Mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token.
I know a lot of people love this commander. Jake Boss, one of our friends here at the Command Zone, loves his Brutaclad deck. Why did you mark it as one of the best cards in the deck?
I think this just synergizes with Mishra himself so well. It's basically doubling his ability. You don't get a second ETB because the mirror will not enter as a copy of whatever your war form did. But it's basically doubling up what Mishra does, except you get to keep the ones that Brutaclad made.
And, oh gosh, keep them. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to only get one. Maybe you have another token somewhere. You turn a couple of tokens into a thing. And spoiler alert, not all of the cards are ETB cards too. Some of them are just like, oh, if that turns into a creature, it's scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what's the next best card in the deck?
The next one is the one we just hyped. It's Cursed Mirror.
Yep.
We think it's good.
It's just a good card.
Yeah.
It's like a mana rock that has a big enough upside that is a 3-mana rock, and I think it's worth playing.
Yeah. Now, let's see if you have that to say about this upcoming 4-mana rock, which is the last card on this list.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see it. Let's go ahead and hear your case here. Let's read it first.
It's Machine God's Effigy. It's a new card. It's a 4-mana artifact. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact and has tap for blue. It's not a creature, or it can just tap for blue.
I guess I'm not surprised. I think I missed the it's not a creature part my first read through. So it makes total sense. You can now turn one of your creatures into a not creature to make a copy of with Mishra, correct?
Yeah, you can do that for, I believe it's any creature on the board. It doesn't even have to be
not even
your own.
yours. Oh, crap. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Or you can choose not to do that when it first enters, and then every time you make a copy of it with Mishra, you can have it enter as a different thing on the board that you need the ETB of, assuming that thing is a creature.
So it's like this weird conduit that widens Mishra's ability. It's a force multiplier for Mishra, saying like, oh, never mind, Mishra, you can just copy creatures now.
Yeah, and it's an interesting choice you have to make as to whether, do I want this to enter as a creature right away, or do I want to not do that so that it synergizes arguably a little better with Mishra?
I think you don't want to most of the time because creatures are easier to kill, and if it's one of the best cards in the deck, you want it not to go away.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. All right, very cool. I like that new card, Machine God's Effigy. All right, next up is everybody's favorite part, which is what 10 cards did Jamie pick to upgrade this deck for $30 or less? And what 10 cards are we going to take out to make room for it? But before we tell you what they are, we got to take a quick break and hear a message from our sponsors. We'll be right back. This episode of The Command Zone is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online.
Where am I? What is this place? I'm totally lost! Just kidding, I know where I am. Yes, I'm called Azusa Lost But Seeking, but I am not physically lost. I, like so many others, seek purpose, guidance, meaning. This path to self-discovery can be stressful, but I do not walk it alone. I have the support and guidance of my therapist. You see, therapy isn't just for when you are feeling down and out. It's something everyone can benefit from, like extra land drops. And BetterHelp makes it easy and accessible. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors and get some unbiased feedback. You'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. See if it's for you. For we are all a little lost, but must never stop seeking.
Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/CommandZone. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CommandZone.
Thank you, Marvel Snap, for sponsoring this video.
Do you like deep strategic card games where you can build synergistic decks and outthink your opponents?
I mean, if you are hearing our voices right now, you're Commander players, so we know you do. But what that means is you need to try Marvel Snap.
It's a digital card game full of awesome Marvel characters, and we've both been playing a ton of it.
It was made by former Hearthstone designer Ben Brode's new company, and Ben actually plays a ton of Commander too.
You put together a 12-card singleton deck to try and win 2 of 3 locations that appear on the board.
Deck building is an absolute blast, and you can unlock cards just by playing. There's no pay to win.
I've been using a combo of Iron Man and Onslaught. Iron Man doubles your power.
I am Iron Man.
But Onslaught makes him quadruple your power instead.
Ooh, that's what we call synergy. And games are super quick, so it's easy to mix up your tactics and try new things.
Plus, in the middle of a game, you can snap, which doubles the stakes. It's a unique strategic move that gives you the chance to outplan and outplay your opponents.
Yeah, you can use it to get more out of a victory, or you can bluff a strong hand when you don't have one, and maybe trick your opponent into retreating.
Retreating is for cowards.
Yeah, but sometimes it's the right move. Where are you on the ladder?
Whoa, personal question. I can't answer that.
Sorry.
Not that high.
Marvel Snap is out now in early access on Steam and full release on mobile. Global launch was on October 18th, so you can download the game right now using our link in the description.
Ambassador Blorpity Blorp Boop, we need you at the embassy.
Finally, our negotiations with the Rum Dudley Flumbersons may yield a lasting peace. Thanks to the skilled team of economic and political officers I hired on Indeed. With Indeed, I was able to attract, interview, and hire all in one place, making it the ideal ticket to find employees who will really stick, or as I like to call them, stickers. I found strong talent fast without breaking the embassy budget, thanks to tools like Instant Match, assessments, and of course, virtual interviews, which saved me days on hiring without any additional downloads, purchases, plugins, or Goober students.
Ambassador, the Heptapoots are attacking Blorp Prime!
Then today, our people go to war.
Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applications from resumes in our database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/CommandZone to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/CommandZone. Again, Indeed.com/CommandZone. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, we are back. I'm here with our staff writer, Jamie Block, and we are breaking down this Mishra's Burnished banner precon. We're doing the upgrade guide. We're getting to the fun part here, which is we're going to start to list off the 10 cards that we think you should add to the deck to get it up to speed and ready to tangle with quote-unquote real decks as soon as possible. Again, we've set ourselves a $30 budget for this. Jamie, real quick before we list off the cards, what were you thinking when you started to go into this process? Was there certain categories or areas that you knew you wanted to aim for with the cards you're going to add?
I wanted it to be a little faster, a little lower to the ground, and to have a couple more real concrete, this is a win con card that were non-creature artifacts. It had a couple sort of big, clunkier creatures that seemed like the way it was going to get to victory, but that just didn't feel like the right way to do it with Mishra, and a lot of them were a bit overcosted. So the goal is some win cons, and then kind of just a sprinkling of everything, sort of the draw, the tutor, the ramp that you need to deploy them fast and get them going.
Make it a little more efficient, make sure it can win.
Right.
Okay, cool. All right, let's talk about the first category, which is ramp.
Got a couple new pieces. The first one is Ethereum Sculptor. It's 1 and a blue for a 1/2 artifact creature, and it reads, artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast.
That seems good because we know there are, 43 artifact spells in this deck?
There are 43 artifacts in the deck. There's a good amount of card draw on the deck, so there's a decent chance that your hand will be full of artifacts. And in that case, you want something that makes each of them 1 mana cheaper rather than, just something that taps for 1 mana to go toward one of them.
Yeah, a lot of times in the right decks, these kind of effects can be stronger than 2 mana rocks or mana rocks, because if you think of it as you play a spell, you got a 1 mana discount. That is like tapping an arcane signet. But if you play 2 spells in a turn, you save 2 mana, 2 artifact spells.
Yeah,
and it's not crazy in Commander to play 3-4 spells in a turn.
Yeah, this will pay for itself very quickly.
Yeah,
and this is going for 60 cents right now.
Pretty cool. All right, what's the next one?
Next one is Enthusiastic Mechanaut.
It's very similar.
It's very similar. It's a blue and a red for a 2/2 flying artifact creature with the same ability. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast.
These spells really, they stack up really well. I was going to say stack, but I was confused people with the stack. They combine really well. That's the word I was looking for. Because of the way artifacts generally work, which is a lot of them are just colorless mana and no colored mana. So if you're in green and it says green creature spells or just creature spells cost 1 less to cast, it's still good. But because of green pips, it's probably you're always going to pay some amount of mana still for the creatures. Ethereum Sculptor plus Enthusiastic Mechanaut often mean like a lot of my artifacts are just 0 mana now.
Yeah. Also, I think the flying on this is pretty relevant. I have just experienced that in my last maybe 4 or 5 Commander games, at some point, someone has gotten attacked because they were the only one without a flyer.
Oh yeah, that seems to happen all the time.
Yeah, even if it's a flyer that could have chumped, just having a flyer that can come out early really dissuades a lot of attacks coming at you.
I would also say from the opposite end of that, I've seen a lot of Commander games or played in a lot recently. I feel like where just having a flyer saved me from dying because there was an alpha strike that could happen, but, you can block. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of counting on like, well, okay, fine, I'll just kill Jimmy then because he doesn't have a flyer. And so it's amazing how it's only a 2/2 and can't block profitably, but still did save my life by just dissuading that attack.
Yep. And that's going for just 25 cents right now.
Cheap. Nice. So we're only 85 cents in. We got 8 cards to go. Let's see if you're saving up for something big or you're just, in general, fiscally responsible. Next is the removal category. And we did notice that removal was a tad light in this deck. So I think it'll be nice to get a couple of new pieces. What's number 1?
Number 1 is Aether Spellbomb.
Love this card.
It's great. It's a 1 mana artifact. So maybe a free artifact if you've got that ramp.
Yep.
You can pay blue and sack it to bounce a creature, or you can pay 1 and sack it to draw a card. So it's also sort of a card draw piece in this deck.
Yeah, because you make the copy with Mishra, you attack with your 4/4 or whatever, and then you pay the one before Mishra's delayed trigger would cause to go away anyway, and draw the card.
Sack abilities are just like in the category of ETB and Dies abilities, things that are good with Mishra. Because it's going to go away. Yeah, it's going to go away anyway.
It's like sneak attack or something, right? Or at the end of the turn, you're going to lose it. I think bounce is also just overrated in Commander in general. I see it to be generally the same as Exile. In general, if you can stop something, you only want to do it at the point it's about to kill you, and bounce will do that just as well as, usually better than like Destroy will, because indestructible and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
To the listener who did not quite pick up on the context clue, I think he meant underrated.
Did I say overrated?
You did.
I meant underrated. Thanks for.
We vibe well together. Look at this. Finishing each other's sandwiches.
All right. And then we've got another piece of removal. I like this one. Another card I think is underrated, but for real underrated this time.
This is Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship. It's a 5-mana vehicle. It's a 6/5. It has flying, and whenever it ETBs or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and it has crew 3. A quick note on this. So this is legendary.
Yep.
But Mishra doesn't care, because Mishra makes his artifact named Mishra's War Form, so you can still copy a legend.
Also, it's not a creature unless you want it to be. So you get to be like, copy it with Mishra when it's not a creature. You could still crew the thing with something else, maybe with Mishra, and now you can attack with 2 of them, deal 6 damage. You just dealt 3 when the other one entered. That is big game, hitting somebody for 12. I feel like every time I play Sky Sovereign, I have in a couple of decks, it always feels better than I think it's going to feel. It always comes down, kills something, threatens a big attack, or can't, allows me to block, like we were talking about earlier. And then the 3 damage is always like, well, I can just pick off stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's not quite Inferno Titan in the sense that you can't split the damage up, but often you don't need to, and just, yeah, I think it's a pretty versatile piece of removal. And yeah, vehicles, like you were saying, are just great with Mishra.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that one a lot. All right. We're out of the removal category, and now we are talking about more copies, because what's better than some copies is more copies. What are we copying? I mean, how are we making more copies?
First, we're making them with Delina Wildmage.
Oh, yeah, this card.
It's literally just more copies.card. It's 3 and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature. Whenever she attacks, you choose a target creature you control, then roll a d20. If you hit a 1 through 14, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it has exile this creature at end of combat. And if you roll really well, you get a 15 or above, you create one of those tokens and then roll again.
So if you get a 15 or 20, you're getting another token. But if you get a 15 or 20 the second time, you're getting a third token. And if you get a 15 or 20 the third time, then people get really scared. That's what I've learned. And by the way, it happens. I've multiple times seen people make 4+ tokens with Delina Wildmage. And it just feels like the world is rocking on its axis when that happens. Like, you're like, what is going on? How do you have 5 of those?
Yeah, they're not terrible odds. And no matter what, you're getting 1, which is an important part. And yeah, it is making another copy of whatever you made a copy of with Mishra, probably. There are also, some other creatures in the deck that are just sort of worth copying on their own with Delina.
Mm-hmm. There's no way to copy Mishra here and get extra Mishra triggers, though, right? Because he triggers at beginning of combat and Delina triggers at beginning of combat. So without extra combats, you wouldn't be able to do that, right?
Right. The timing doesn't work, and it especially doesn't work, and this will be relevant for the next card on this list. Delina exiles her tokens at end of combat, so even if you, got an extra combat, those Mishras would not be around.
Yeah, so there's no way to use this exactly with Mishra himself, but you use it with the token copies he makes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we teed up the nice card nicely. The next card nicely. It is
Karlach, Fury of Avernus. One of my favorite cards of this year, honestly. It's 4 and a red for a 5/4 legendary creature. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. It has choose a background, not relevant here, but part of the text.
So I like this card a lot and have found it to be quite good and powerful. And the biggest reason is because the turn you play it, you don't have to attack with Karlach. You attack with something else.
I love the words whenever you attack, which is sort of a slightly more recent design innovation they've been doing. Raffine featured it to great effect. I just think it's great. You don't have to worry about giving it haste. So when you get another combat phase, that's another Mishra trigger, and you still have the one from last time.
Right, because you don't lose that one until end step. So it says, well, it's not the end step, it's another combat. So now you can just attack with this thing again. Yeah.
Yeah, the more extra combats you can get, and of course, extra combat spells are pretty expensive monetarily in Magic, so there's not room for a ton of them, but that is a great way to go with Mishra, because every time you get an extra combat, that's a new trigger, but you still have the one that he made last combat, so you just get 4/4s that snowball unto one another.
Nice. Good with Delina Wildmage as well, because you get to roll again. Obviously, you lose the first round of tokens, but you get to try again.
Yeah, rest your luck.
Yeah, I found Karlach to be very good in a lot of decks. Anything that's talking about at the beginning of combat, even better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got only 4 more left. The next category is called tutoring.
Yes, a couple tutors, but they are sort of on the more specific end. The first one is Goblin Engineer. It's 1 and a red for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for an artifact card and put it into your graveyard. And then you can pay a red, tap him, and sacrifice an artifact to return an artifact card with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you can find anything and put it in your graveyard, but especially in this deck, you're likely to find something that costs 3 or less, then switch it. They have both Wellsprings in this deck. So if you can, even if you're just cycling those two with each other, those are 2 artifacts that have both enter the battlefield and dies abilities. Just getting that value every turn on its own is
powerful.
Pretty great.
Yeah, and if you have one, you can find the other with the Engineer. We should say the Goblin Engineer is $4.50 at the time we're recording this. Also works really good with the constructs from Mishra, right? So they're going to go away anyway, so you just use them as their artifact you're sacrificing after they attack or after you got the ETB, and then get a real artifact, quote unquote, back into play.
Right.
And, just allows you to sort of reuse your low CMC artifacts over and over.
Yeah, and that is sort of effectively what our next card is doing as well. It's Arkham Dagson. It's 3 and a blue for a 2/2 legendary creature. It has tap. Target artifact creature's controller sacrifices it. That player may search their library for a non-creature artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library.
So that is a hugely powerful ability in this deck, because Mishra is making these constructs that are going to go away anyway, so they're very expendable. And it has some very powerful high CMC artifacts, some new cards too, to put into play. And just cheating the mana cost of stuff like that is can be extremely broken. You can get a Wondrous Crucible into play with this, which is one of the new cards in the deck that does nutty things once you've got it out. So start copying that with Mishra. Yeah, that's the thing. Arkham sacrifices the construct Mishra made to go get your craziest non-creature artifact into play, so Mishra can continue to copy that thing. Yikes.
Yeah, it's effectively getting its next piece of fodder to tutor the next piece of fodder and so on, assuming that you have Mishra out, of course.
It feels like two turns or so with that, and it's going to be out of control.
Yeah, Arkham is going for $650 right now. It is the most expensive card on the list, though only by a little. There's just sort of a few that are in the 4 to 6 range here.
Yeah, so shows that it is very powerful in the deck, that you're willing to spend like a significant portion of the budget on it. But it makes sense. Okay, we're going to move into our last category and our last 2 cards here. It's called Win Cons, and the first up is called Thunderhawk Gunship, which is a Warhammer 40,000 card. 40K, I know, everybody. We know what it's called.
We hear you.
Sometimes we're told to say things, or we're told we have to say things in certain ways.
Oh man, Jordan's going to really appreciate you saying that.
Yep. We wanted to say 40K. We tried really hard.
We did.
But yeah, they want it to be called 40,000, and it's their game, so what the heck. Okay.
Is any of this staying in?
Probably. I don't work for Games Workshop. Okay.
Aha. Thunderhawk Gunship, you ask the listener.
Oh, yeah, that's the name of the card, after Tangent.
It's a 6-mana vehicle. It's a 6/6 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature tokens with Vigilance, and whenever it attacks, attacking creatures you control gain flying until end of turn, and it has crew 2.
Okay. So it's...
This is our aggro win con.
Yeah.
It's making 2 2/2s every time it enters, and when you make the copy with Mishra's Warform, you can use one of those new 2/2s you got to crew the original that is still on the battlefield. Nice. And then when you attack with those, your board gets flying. It's obviously not an insta-win or anything, but it is a pretty good snowball of tokens that will gain flying. A lot of the 2/2 tokens will all stick around. So over the course of a few turns, you can really whittle someone's life total down fast.
Yeah, I didn't really think about how good the vehicles were with Mishra, but that sets up pretty well, especially one that makes tokens accrue. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yep.
And what's
that's going for $2.30 right now. $2.30.
$2.30 from the new Warhammer product. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got one last card here under the win cons category.
And boy, is it one, such that there is even a caveat around it.
The caveat is that some people won't want to do this.
Yes, and we have a backup for you, so don't worry.
Yeah, if you don't like going infinite, don't worry, we have a backup. But this one, Jamie got excited about, and it's okay. Some people like to combo, so this one does it.
Yeah, and if you want to, here you go. It's Gonti's Ether Heart. It's a 6-mana legendary artifact. When it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you get 2 energy. And then you can pay 8 energy and exile Gonti's Ether Heart to take an extra turn after this one. So to explain how this works, you have this on the...
Let's first say it's $6.
Yes, $6, second most expensive on the list. You have it in play. You have Mishra in play. You make a copy of it. The copy and the original both see the new one entering. So that's 4 energy right away.
So now you must have 6 because you got 2 from the original.
Right. And sort of even if you don't, you at least have 4, and any one new artifact entering the battlefield after that will get you 4 more because you have both of them on the battlefield.
Right.
So the infinite here, it's not infinite with the commander on its own. It's infinite with the commander and having any artifact enter the battlefield during or after combat.
So once you have 8, you sack, you pay the 8, and you exile the copy.
Right.
And you got an extra turn, and then you do the same thing again.
Yeah.
So you do need another artifact that's going to constantly come into the battlefield somehow.
Yeah, and whether it's you just cast one from your hand, or there are cards in the deck and ones that are added here that can do that. Brutaclad, assuming your stack your triggers right, can do that.
Goblin Engineer could even do it.
Yeah, Master Transmuter can do it if you have one in hand. Getting an extra combat with Karlach can do it because then you get yet another one.
And you're drawing a card on each of those extra turns. Some of those are going to be artifacts. Yeah, it might not be infinite. It could just be a lot, but sometimes it is going to be infinite.
Yeah, sometimes it's deterministic. Sometimes it's non-deterministic. It is hopefully a lot of extra turns. And hey, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe that's not the way you play. We have a substitute. It is the exact same price. That is a coincidence, but it worked out that way. It's not a Lloyd ship. It's a 4-mana vehicle, 5/5. It has flying. When it ETBs, you exile target player's graveyard, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can put a card that's exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control.
A creature card, yeah.
A creature card, and it has crew 3. So this is, with vehicles, we're punching in the air. And this is sort of the win con of take my opponent's win con. It's a good piece of graveyard hate in the deck regardless. You're exiling a graveyard every turn, hitting with a flyer. And, if you can remove something, go to combat, exile the graveyard, and get that thing onto the battlefield under your control, if you can repeat that process, that's pretty powerful stuff. And you're not taking infinite turns to do so. And like I said, that's going for the same price, about $6.
Okay, cool. And so our grand total for our 10 cards added is about $29.70, just under the budget.
Just under.
Nice.
You got to use it, or else they won't give you as much next year.
All right, what is the honorable mentions for the deck?
We have a few.
We usually like to throw in a couple, and the first one I can tell is because of budgetary reasons.
It absolutely is. It's Bloodthirster, which is another Warhammer 40,000/40K card.
Okay, we'll just say 40K from now on, although I will ironically probably say 40,000.
And I might because I have a mimic brain. It's 5 and a red for a 6/6 flying demon, also has trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, untap it. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase, but it can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn.
So it's supposed to be like, you're only going to get 2 more extra combats.
Yeah. Interestingly, so let's say it hits the last player.
Yeah.
It hits the third opponent. You still get an additional combat after that.
Oh, so you'll get 3.
It can't attack during that combat, but your Mishra trigger still happens during that combat. So yeah, this card is pretty backbreaking with Mishra and any relevant thing to be copying, which
it does have to deal combat damage. So this is not like Karlach. You play it, got to either give it haste or wait till the next turn, and you have to connect with it as well. So the
flying trample helps you do that, but there are going to be games where one opponent just has a wall that's keeping you from doing that. That is another great way to deal with it. Because
Karlach's one thing, you play it, they didn't see it coming, you did combat now. This is like play it, wait. Okay, they're going to save their removal or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not saying it'll never happen, it's just harder for sure.
This card is $15 right now, which honestly, it climbed in the last 3 days. It was maybe half that. So
feels like a lot.
People are high on this
$6 card, but yeah. All right.
Up next is sort of a 2-in-1.
You're cheating.
I am cheating. It's Obeka Brute Chronologist and Sundial the Infinite.
Yeah,
which
this is the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, they're 35 cents and $6 respectively. You'd sort of know them. They both end the turn.
So you keep those Mishra tokens forever.
Yes. You go to your end step. The delayed trigger to sacrifice the Mishra token goes onto the stack. You respond to that by activating whichever one of these cards you have. You get to keep the tokens and snowball your board instead of losing them every turn.
I'm curious, why didn't one of those make the actual list?
Sundial was for price, and Obeka was for the fact that it is a 4-mana creature that only does that, and you have to untap with it.
Yeah. And it's not an artifact that synergizes in other ways with the deck. The Sundial is, it might be worth it.
Yeah. If you like
I can see the argument for it over like Arkham or something like that.
Yeah. Especially just sort of deck building sensibilities. If you're someone who doesn't like to play a lot of tutors, subbing this in instead of Arkham, that might be a great move for you.
Yeah. And it's also like Goblin Engineer can find it. It can be copied with Mishra. Not that the copy does a lot for you, but still has those synergies.
It offers you the protection of if someone can only remove one of them, you still have one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you can use it the turn that you play it. So it's going to do the thing.
Yeah.
All right. We're because Gonti's Etherheart was not mean enough. We've got one more honorable mention that is a mean card as well.
It's Mindslaver.
Yep.
6-mana legendary artifact. Pay 4, tap, and sack it. You control target player during that player's next turn. If you're in the 1v1, congratulations, you've won the game. If you're not, you're going to be really mean probably to one person, and the other 2 people or one person, I can't imagine, is not going to start targeting you at that point.
It's 2v2 at that point because you get to...
That's true.
You get to control one player, the most powerful player, and yourself. Yeah, because remember, Mishra makes the copy of the Mindslaver, which you then sack to take control of the other player's turn. If you have some extra combat stuff going on, it could fairly easily be end of game as well.
Yeah, if you've got the mana and the combats... It can do it. It's a very mean thing to do. It's especially mean if you don't have that and you're just controlling one person while the other 2 still get to play the game. That's a big part of why it's not on the list. Is it just seems like there's going to be too many scenarios where this creates a feels bad for the table. Right. But it's just too interesting an interaction for me to not at least talk about.
Yeah, I did at least mention it.
I had to talk about it.
If there was one effect I think maybe should not exist in Magic, it's the take another player's turn. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Those were our 3.5 honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk now, because if we're going to add 10 cards in, we have to remove 10 cards from the deck. And the cuts can often be tough and difficult, especially for newer players. So we like to help guide you a little bit of what we think doesn't necessarily need to be in the deck or isn't the strongest stuff. So let's talk about the cards to take out.
Yep. Up first, we have Prophetic Prism. It's a 2-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and you can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So it is fixing, not ramp. The ETB draw card with Mishra, it's relevant. The deck just sort of had enough of it that the fact that this is all this card does just didn't feel impactful enough.
Yep.
Up next, we have Geth, Lord of the Vault. 4 black for a 5/5 legendary creature. It has Intimidate, and you can pay X and a black. Put target artifact or creature card with mana value X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player mills X cards. It's a powerful effect. It seems like the synergy with the commander is mostly maybe your opponent has a non-creature artifact that's interesting, but it just doesn't offer really any direct synergy. There's even some graveyard interaction in the deck, but this is milling your opponents, never yourself.
Right. Mishra can't copy this thing. It's not an artifact. It's also a creature.
Yeah.
That's like a head scratcher of why it's even in there.
Yeah, I agree. Up next, at least I understand why it's here. It's Workshop Elders, 6 and a blue, so 7 total for a 4.
I'm out already. 7 mana.
It's a 4/4. It's a 4/4 non-artifact. It does say artifact creatures you control have flying. It also says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target non-creature artifact you control become a 0/0 artifact creature, and you can put 4+1/+1 counters on it, which also seems a bit like an anti-synergy in that once you've done that, you can't make copies of it with Mishra anymore.
Yeah, well, you don't even want to do what it does. So, yeah, that makes no sense for 7 mana. Go on.
Up next, hey, it's another 7-drop. It's Hellkite Igniter, 5 red, so 7 total, for a 5/5 flying haste. And you can pay 1 in a red to give it plus X plus O until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This can be a finisher.
Yeah.
This is sort of on the edge as far as
because you can activate more than
goes.
once, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is say, oh, I've got 7 artifacts. Attack with this thing. Activate it 3 times. Give it plus 21.
Yeah. If you have a way to make just truly a ton of mana, this can come out of nowhere and take someone out. The deck doesn't really have a way to be that explosive,
right,
even with these additions, especially for the amount of red mana you need to do that. So it's a little slow being 7 mana, 9 mana all day to even activate it once.
I mean, yeah, you're probably not realistically activating it the turn you play it. It's 7, hope it survives, and then it's pretty scary.
Yeah. Up next, we have Metalwork Colossus, which I'll just say, I love that in the retro frame they brought back the little grave symbol on the top to show that it has graveyard synergy. But I don't love that it costs 11 mana, which realistically in this deck it won't.
Yeah.
But it's an 11 mana 10/10. It costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. And you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to return it from your graveyard to your hand. Now, I actually got to see this card be free, die, come back by sacrificing expendable things, get cast again for free, and yet it still didn't make an impact in the game that much because it doesn't have evasion or trample or anything.
Right, it just has big.
It just has big, and just being a 10/10 with no sort of combat relevant abilities beyond that just doesn't seem to be enough in Commander anymore.
And Mishra cares about non-creature artifacts. It is a creature.
Yep. Up next, we have a new card. It's Scavenged Brawler. It's a 6 mana 4/4. It has flying, vigilance, trample, and lifelink.
It's a lot.
You can pay 5 and exile it from your graveyard to choose target creature, put 4 +1/+1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. But you can only do that at sorcery speed.
Oh, so you get whatever its mechanized
yes, it fuses
accessories
itself
were
onto something that is
Gotcha.
on the battlefield.
That's why you scavenged it. Okay. But it's still not good enough.
It's not quite good enough. It's a 6 mana 4/4 with, again, abilities that are great to see. But yeah, just the amount of mana that you have to put into it is not equal to what you're getting out of it in a 4-player format.
Yeah, and again, it is a creature artifact, so Mishra doesn't interact with it in any way, really.
Right. Up next is another new card. It is Blast Furnace Hellkite. This costs 9 mana, 7 red, but again, it won't actually cost that because it has Artifact Offering, which means you can sacrifice an artifact as you're casting it and pay the difference. And you can do that to make it be castable at instant speed.
So you sacrifice a 5 CMC artifact, and this thing costs 4?
Yeah, 2 red in that case. It's a 5/5 flying double strike, and it says creatures attacking your opponents have double strike. So it really incentivizes your opponents to attack one another. It's a very powerful effect. You just really don't want to be caught in the situation where any of the cards in your hand are a dead card. And the fact that this costs 9 mana puts it at risk. This is very close. You know, you are probably going to have an expendable war form that's a copy of a 4-mana artifact.
I was just going to say, we should remember that copies do take the CMC of the thing they're copying. So if you copy a 5-mana non-creature artifact and turn it into a war form, if you sack it to the Blast Furnace Hellkite, it will take the 5 mana off the casting cost.
Yeah. I should mention, you know, as we are casting a card that is pretty on the edge, a couple of these cuts were pretty obvious, but the deck is good. Just going through the deck, a lot of the cards are good and really synergize with the commanders.
I mean, that's the thing about making cuts to decks, and something that if you're a new player or an experienced player, you just have to learn is like, yeah, to make your deck, you know, to continue to optimize it, if you want to do that, if that's something you want to do, eventually you will have to cut good cards for better cards. And at any level, we're just taking a precon and upgrading it a little. You still have to do that to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Traxos, Scourge of Krug. It's a 4-mana 7/7 with trample, good rate, but it enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step, but whenever you cast a historic spell, untap it. Honestly, you'll be untapping this most of the time. The drawback barely matters, but it is a 4-mana 7/7 with trample, sort of end of text.
That you can't copy with Mishra.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just like good rate on a 7/7, but yeah.
Yeah, every so often you'll catch someone off guard early with those stats, but more often than not, you won't. Up next, we have to pronounce it again.
Uh-oh.
It's Muzio or Muzio or something, Visionary Architect.
Certainly something.
It costs 1 blue. It's a legendary creature. It's a 1/3, and it has pay 3 and a blue and tap it. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. You may put an artifact card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This was another close call, but just we cut some of the more expensive artifacts. There are still some in there. We added, a 5 and a 6 in there. But if you're in the position, because there are a lot of 2s and 3s, where you're paying 4 mana to dig 2 or 3 cards and just have that relatively high chance of whiffing, boy, does 4 mana and tap a creature do nothing feel like a bad move.
Yeah.
It's just a high risk, but potentially very high reward. But, just
and
don't
slow.
take the
You
risk.
can't even just play it and do it, right? Like, it has to have either haste or you have to untap with it. This is good in a deck that already has some way to manipulate the top of its library. Way less good if you can't. 43 artifacts sounds like a lot, but remember, there are some other requirements thrown in there that make it so you're not hitting every time for sure.
Yeah, and even if you hit, but your hit just sort of costs less than 4 mana, does it still feel good?
Yeah, only if you had no cards or something, which this deck doesn't feel like it's going to have a problem with.
No, it really should not. And then the last cut, which was sort of the one I was most on the edge on, was Mirrorworks. It's a 5 mana artifact. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that artifact, and that token just sticks around. A lot of the artifacts in this deck, they have good ETBs.
Yep.
They have sack abilities.
They already want to be copied because that's the whole point.
That's the whole point, but it's 7 mana total to get your first copy of something.
Yep. And these cards always read better than they are. It's like Mind's Eye and things like that. But yeah, as you start doing the math, you're like, at what point will I be happy? 7 mana, I get a copy. Well, I'm not happy with that. I can get copies for way cheaper. 9 mana, I get 2 copies. Nope. We're almost at Rite of Replication. I should get 5 copies. 11 mana, I get 3. It's getting a little better, but that's 11 mana we're talking about now. 13 mana, I get 4. I guess I'm okay with this rate now, but at what point will I have 13 mana? So there's just no point along that curve that's realistically means I was happy with the card.
Yeah.
Okay, those are our cuts. I like it, Jamie. The only one I would think about is the Blast Furnace Hellkite, which I might be biased because I've seen it in action a couple times and it's pretty brutal. Double Strike is just you could kill people out of nowhere.
Sure.
Let's talk about how the deck plays. We're in a situation where we've actually either played with the deck or witnessed it in play quite a bit because of Game Nights Live. We were doing a lot of rehearsals for the performance and stuff, so I'd say we know more about this deck than we usually do about the decks. What's been your experience either playing it or sort of watching it in action? And we should say, Jamie is our rules expert for game nights and most of our gameplay videos here at the Command Zone, and so we usually have him around at all times when we're especially playing with new cards and new decks, because questions come up all the time. So you really were in and around Game Nights Live, and he's backstage at Game Nights Live the whole time, making sure that we don't mess anything up or miss anything, and kind of keeping us honest. You saw him on the Whatnot stream. Anybody who knows how that ended knows that Jamie knew that we had messed it up. So yeah.
Oh man, what a flashback.
I think that just speaks to your game knowledge, though. You did catch it.
Yeah.
We were just past the point where that mattered anymore.
Yes. No one wanted it to matter.
Yeah. Listen, he was going to win anyway, so it didn't matter. Yeah.
But yes, as to how the deck plays, and you honestly maybe seen this particular deck in action a little more than I have. In the out-of-the-box version, I've seen it just have a lot of great sort of ways to sacrifice the tokens the Mishra makes for whatever value you need, whether it is finding more artifacts to put on the table, whether it's removing the thing you need to remove, whether it's just drawing a bunch of cards. I've seen Dreamstone Hedron, which I just don't think of as being a particularly great card, be great in this deck.
Well, when you're copying it and then using it as a card draw spell, it's a totally different thing than just like I played it and I'm using just that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think just with these changes, the way that the play pattern changes, if at all, is just it gives you a couple win cons to dig specifically for, and it gives you more tools to do so. So you really are just sort of playing the value game early on and using Mishra to copy whatever it is you need. Do you need more card draw? Do you need to remove a specific thing on the board? The fact that you should have this board full of non-creature artifacts that all fulfill a different purpose, and each combat on your turn, you can copy whichever one is relative to you relevant to you in the moment.
Yep.
Just gives you the chance to dig into the late game, find the thing that's going to win it for you, play it out, get there.
Yeah. I really like this deck a lot. It's definitely my kind of deck. Gavin designed these decks, so it's no surprise because he's a very good player, first of all, but he also, I think, understands this kind of play style really well. And I love what you said there because it feels like piloting the deck really matters because it matters a lot what you choose to copy, and you will have options. And the options make you feel, first of all, it's fun because you have a lot of choices of what to do, but you feel like you have a lot of choices and decisions to make, and that matters to the outcome. So it really feels after you play this deck like you always can think back to lines of like, well, what if I'd done this and what if I've done that? And there's all these forking decision trees and stuff, which I love about the game of Magic in general. Is just, it never feels like, oh boy, I didn't have a chance in that game or this deck was just outclassed. A lot of times you're like, oh, I probably should have done this and then that, and then I would have been in a totally different position. But I did have an answer if I'd really thought about it to what was going on the board. And I always like decks like that where it feels like I had the tools available to me. Did I use them right? Maybe I did, and maybe I won. Did I not? Maybe I still won somehow, and maybe I didn't use them right. I made mistakes, and that's why I lost. And it feels like cool. Let's play again because I'll make less mistakes the next time. So yeah, it really does get a full board really fast too. Like it will fill up your playmat like fairly quickly.
Yeah, artifact decks are just impressive like that.
Yeah, it's a fun deck. I think I would recommend this to people to pick up just as a deck to play. I think it's going to be a good one. All right, to the listeners, what do you think about Mishra's Burnished banner? Are there any cards we missed that you definitely think we should have added? Are there any cards we suggested to take out that you're like, no, that card must stay in the deck? Are you guys crazy? We'd love to hear from you. Twitter, in the comments, anywhere, email. You can snail mail us if you want and you have the address, which you probably don't. Okay, if you want to pick up this deck, or the Urza deck, or any of the cards from Brothers War, or maybe you're like me and you still don't really have that many Infinity cards. I do have the 40K stuff. I feel like I didn't play Dominator United or don't have much of that. Listen, all that stuff available. cardkingdom.com/command. They really are the fastest in the business at getting you your cards when you order them. I can't count the number of times that, I'm like, I need these 7, 8, 9. Oh crap, it actually ends up being 15 cards. Oh, I need to get them in my hands fast because we're playing, on Wednesday night. And the only place I'll trust in those circumstances is Card Kingdom. They are going to get you your cards super fast. They're really generous with their grading. The cards always look really good. They're always in the condition that they promised. And they go above and beyond if there's any mistakes made or anything's missed. They really do make things right with the customer. That's like one of their big things is just they really care about service. So we're really happy to be sponsored by Card Kingdom once again. cardkingdom.com/command. Place to go to pick up all your Magic products and singles. And then, of course, to protect that stuff, the best game accessories brand is ULTRAPRO. They are the ones that Jimmy and I trust our own collections to. Eclipse sleeves, Satin Tower deck boxes, awesome play mats. They have deck boxes with the artwork from all the recent sets on them, too. So if you make a Mishra deck and you want a Mishra playmat and Mishra sleeves and a Mishra deck box so that your costume can be, all matching and people can be like, ooh, that's cool when you pull it out. Well, there's no place to go but ultrapro.com/command. That's our affiliate link. And when you use it, you are supporting this show, game nights, extra turns, all of our content. We really appreciate everybody that does that. Okay, let's move on to the end step where we talk about something cool outside the world of Magic. Jamie, you got something cool?
I do. I think it's like pretty much the textbook definition of cool. It's Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which is the anime based in the Cyberpunk universe from the tabletop game and most recently the video game, Cyberpunk 2077. And it's just cool. I am not the huge anime fan that you might expect me to be for a person who works here. I don't know if you know our workplace culture. We talk about anime a lot.
There's a lot of anime fans. I'm also on the end of the spectrum. I'm not a huge anime person. It's not that I dislike it, I just don't find myself watching it a lot.
Yeah, this is arguably the second one I've ever watched in its entirety.
After
Ouran High School Host Club.
Okay, that's not what I expected.
Nope.
Okay.
But anyway, this one's great. I played the video game a lot. I played through it, basically 100%ed it twice. I liked it so much. And it was pretty striking being able to watch this anime, and even in a scene where the main character is just walking down the street, you recognize every single intersection.
From the game?
Yeah, they just really rebuilt the city for this anime. It's really good. The story is good. I just don't want to spoil anything by digging too deep into what it's about. But it's just a great cast of characters. Because I am a heathen, watched the dub instead of the subs version. It does have a great voice cast. Matt Mercer is in there.
Oh.
Giancarlo Esposito is in there.
Oh, wow.
In a cameo that was really like, oh, wow, they got him. But yeah, it's great. You don't need me to tell you it's great because it has like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and
I've heard people talk about
96% audience score.
Let me ask you a question. Do I have to have played the game? Because I haven't played the game.
Absolutely not. I've talked to people who work here who have been watching it or watched it through, and everyone's takeaway is it's great. It makes me want to play the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. That is Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Where can I watch it?
Netflix.
All right.
Full season is out.
Netflix. All right. Big thanks to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Damon Lenz, Ashlyn Rose, Arthur Meadowcroft, Craig Blanchett, Lady Danger, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Patrick Nan, Jordan Pridgeon, Jamie Block, Sam Waldo, Gaurav Kalati, Evan Limburger, Mitch Trafford, and we should say also Jimmy Wong. Shout out to Jeffrey Palmer for the living card animations that start the show and sometimes sit behind us, although it was Evan Limburger who did this Warhammer 40,000 one that's right behind us. All right, everybody. We forgot to throw our papers throughout, Jamie. What are we going to do? Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.